heaven.
2022 ended up being a year of unexpected hits and unmet expectations for me. Other than Elden Ring and Xenoblade 3, there really weren't any other titles I was anticipating. This let me dive into my backlog and, well, let's just say that I at least got some garbage out of the way. I did have some surprises though, so let's jump into the games I beat in 2022. The year started with an old school throwback. I played Dragon Quest Monsters 2 Kobe's Adventure with my brother Chapel. I grew up with the first title on my Game Boy, and revisiting this severely underrated world of Dragon Quest Monsters was a delight. But it wasn't all amazing. This game has aged poorly in some aspects. First, it, like many titles during this time, is incredibly vague as far as progression goes. There is almost no direction throughout the game, leaving you to wander the expansive pixelated world, which isn't a bad thing, honestly. The plethora of monsters and breeding options kept me busy for hours. I will say this, the lack of boss monsters was pretty disappointing. Honestly, it's something I'm confused about since the first game had plenty of them. Continuing the Game Boy trend, I took an hour to beat for what seems like the millionth time, The Adventure of Kirby. I played this with my son, and yes, it's still amazing. Simple, short, and amazing. Alright, knowing that many of my subscribers were waiting for another Suikoden list, I decided to play Suikoden 4. Mostly because of this scene right here. Man, Suikoden 4 was a weird title. If you step back and look at it, the game's a complete mess. The environments are dull as hell, the music is whatever, the story's lackluster, and kinda sparse. And the battles are void of all challenge. You are restricted to only 4 party members, which is stupid seeing as collecting characters is kinda what Suikoden's known for. And most of them aren't even that memorable. But you know what? I actually really liked it. I can't explain other than to say that sometimes it's fun to eat bad ramen. At this point I had had enough and decided to play a grown-up game. Enough of this wee baby stuff. I booted up my PS5, threw in Nioh 2, and instantly made my avatar's boobs as big as humanly possible. Here's the thing with Nioh 2, if it were a 15-hour-long game, this could have possibly become my favorite Souls-like ever. The battles are fast, way faster than even Bloodborne, and you feel like a complete badass when you take down baddies with finesse. But once you get past the bus slider, fast-paced combat, and intriguing enemy design, this game long outlasts its welcome. 45 hours later, I couldn't wait for it to be over. Now it was time to really play an adult game. One that demanded a mature outlook. One that required me to think past my childhood and into the future. So in March, I booted up Lost Odyssey. And, well, it was an emotional experience. I don't really cry when I watch or play things, obviously because I'm an alpha chad, but I do get emotional. 3 games have done this to me. Nier Automata, Kingdom Hearts 1, and now Lost Odyssey. What an incredible experience, playing from the perspective of a parent. The story revolves around immortality and the cost of living forever. Sure, it doesn't stick the landing. It devolves into your typical RPG, but just because something ends on a flat note doesn't mean it's not good. Lost Odyssey is unique to play, because for once, the story was almost my entire motivation for continuing. That doesn't always happen. After Lost Odyssey, I decided to try something light, so I picked up the Castlevania Advance Collection on the PS5 and pulled out Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. Wow! I mean, wow. What a sleeper hit. The fact that this was available during my childhood and I didn't play it makes me physically angry. What a gem. This is the very first Metroidvania game I have ever beaten. I've played many, but none of them were able to hold my attention like this title. Because of this, Aria of Sorrow became a contender, and at this point, was my game of the year. Then I played Elden Ring. Let me start by saying this. All the good things you've heard about Elden Ring are true. You know how some games get hyped up to incredible levels, and then you play them and you're like, meh. That was Chrono Trigger for me. It could never have lived up to its own hype. I believe that Elden Ring does. I couldn't put the game down. I poured hours into this title, and I don't regret a single minute. I still like Bloodborne better, but I don't think Bloodborne is a better game objectively. Also, the footage you're watching is one of my proudest gamer moments as I beat the hardest boss in the game. So proud. Now, the RPG scene was starting to wear me down, so I jumped into a platformer and played Rayman Origins. Oh boy, this game was a complete blast. I played the original on PlayStation and it was okay. Rayman Origins never stops moving. Death isn't a punishment, so taking risk is part of the experience. Of all the 2D platformers I've beaten, I'd have to say that this one stands up there with the best. Okay, I need to make something clear about this next title. I understand that many of you are not going to be happy about my thoughts here, but I gotta say this. Nier Replicant is not a good game. In fact, it's so bad that it made me reconsider my love for its sequel, Nier Automata. I have never played a game that has made me more angry at how it wasted my time. Nier Replicant is a joke. You can beat the first playthrough in less than 10 hours. If that was the entire game, then yeah, it would be pretty good. The characters are alright, the battles are simple but fun, and the world is, well, alright. But we're not done, my friends. Unlike normal games where beating it means you beat it, Yoko Taro's insanity continues. Long story short, you have to beat this game a total of 5 times to get the super secret cool ending, which I will admit is pretty awesome. But not worth playing through the same content, the same bosses, the same environments multiple times to see a combined total of like 5 minutes of new content. What a huge disappointment this was. I can't believe that so many of my viewers recommended it. If you like Nier Automata, don't go into this one expecting the same experience. I have a dream to own a functioning Sega CD and all of its games one day. Will that happen? Most likely not. But what did happen is I played Sega CD's Slayer-esque platformer Pop Full Mail. Was it amazing? Not really. Was it fun? Yes, with a guide. If I hadn't been following one though, I would have gotten stuck so many times. Anyway, it exists, and I played it. The end. Sit back and let me tell you a story. My daughter was born in 2015, and months before she graced this world, my wife and I started Dragon's Crown for the PS3. July 14th, 2022. We finally beat it. If you didn't watch my tier list on Dragon's Crown, I suggest you go take a look. My wife helped me on the video, and she did a fantastic job. Oh, and the game's great. I also finally beat another game I started years ago and only played on business trips. That title is Super Robot Tyson OG Saga. The fact that Monolith Soft made this was enough for me. The battle system was incredibly unique and super engaging at first, and the fan service was, kind of charming. It was weird to see this on a Nintendo handheld. But eventually, they wore out their welcome and the game became a bit of a grind. But I got through it, and that's all that matters. So at this point, I was about halfway through Xenoblade 3, which I don't know if anyone told you, but it's a long-ass game. And I needed a breather. Something traditional. Super traditional. Then I remembered that in my panic when I heard the 3DS store was closing, I bought all of the platform exclusives. This included Crimson Shroud. Never heard of it? That's alright. It's a game made by Level 5 and the creator behind the Ivalice Final Fantasy games. No big deal. Was it good? Well, no, but it wasn't bad. It did the job after 7 hours and an incredibly disappointing ending that required me to play through a second time to get the happy ending. I hate that stuff. So at this point, I was about 10/14ths through Xenoblade 3 and needed another break. So I thought, hey, Aria of Sorrow was short and fun. Maybe I'll play its sequel Dawn of Sorrow and have the same kind of experience. Nope. I will say this, I played a ROM of Dawn of Sorrow that patched out the seal drawing mechanic, so I didn't have to deal with that frustration, which was fine. Because there was plenty others. Talk about taking a perfect formula and filling it full of crap. Look, it wasn't bad, but like many of the other games I beat this year, it was okay. Aria of Sorrow is for sure the superior title. So at this point, I was about 3/10 through Xenoblade 3 and needed another break. October was coming up and my wife was interested in watching me play a game, so we picked up Little Nightmares 2. In my recommendations video, I said that Little Nightmares was a surprise hit for me, and Little Nightmares 2 hit about the same. Sure, I didn't really like the ending, but aside from that, this game was creepy, suspenseful, and short, which is perfect for a scary game. So at this point, I finally beat Xenoblade 3. Nearly 200 hours later, I ended the third sequel to one of my favorite games of all time, Xenoblade Chronicles. It was awesome. Better than awesome. It took the best parts of Xenoblade, Xenoblade 2, and Xenoblade X and threw it all into one game. I think my only big issue here is that this formula is starting to feel predictable. I remember playing Xenoblade 1, 2, and X, and constantly pausing to stare around at the world. It's not like 3 is any less impressive, but we've been here before. I'm hoping that the next title in the series breaks off a bit and tries something new, but that's a small gripe. The Xenoblade games are transcendent, and any fans of RPGs should play them. My son and I beat Kirby Superstar next. We played on my SNES Classic, and this game holds up incredibly well as a couch co-op game. The stages are fast and intricate, and the powers are a blast to mess around with. Sure, not every stage, game, because this is 10 games in one, right? Anyway, not every game was perfect, and there were some bumps in the road, but ultimately, Kirby Superstar holds up. Towards the end of the year, I finally bought the equipment needed to record my own gameplay. I have a goal to beat every PS2 RPG and started with Grandia 3. Long story short, this game is the definition of disappointment and set a low standard for the rest of my playthroughs. Will it be the worst? No, not at all, but I wouldn't recommend it. If you want my full thoughts on Grandia 3, check out the video I made cataloging my playthrough. And the final game I beat this year was Star Ocean: The Divine Force. After playing and beating Star Ocean Integrity and Faithfulness a few years back, I swore I would never play another Star Ocean game. But then the reviews came out and the gameplay looked fun, so I caved and dove in. You want to know the most surprising part of this game? Isoa. It's the minifigure side content of the game. Sure, Star Ocean 6 was fun, and the character design was fantastic. But the best part of this game was collecting and battling with these figures. 2023 has some killer titles coming, like Final Fantasy XVI, Trails to Reverie, Atelier Ryza 3, Fire Emblem Engage, Octopath Travelers 2, Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, Eiyuden Chronicles, which I backed, Persona 3 and 4 Switch ports, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and the Breath of the Wild sequel. Holy crap, that is probably the single best lineup of games I've ever seen. I have my work cut out for me. And that's my year. I've started a new series on my channel, playing through and beating all of the PS2 era RPGs. If you want to support this channel, please give those videos a view as they take a ton of work.